Welcome to Season 2 of Outstanding Women Leaders, Witty and Wise Conversations. I'm your host, Katie L. Leeds, leadership and relationship coach by day, comedian and writer by night. And also by day, I've added that in ever since I accidentally gave myself a mild concussion, so I've got to update my script. I'm currently on a mission to host 100 million witty and wise conversations that disrupt the way leaders think and the way the world communicates. No more welcome to my TED Talks and Dear Abby advice friends. It's time to start having powerful conversations, an exchange of ideas without being attached to the outcome. These are the components of a witty and wise conversation that have a power to transform the way we live and lead in a profound way. We have some rules for today. These rules were inspired by the Coactive Training Institute, and they create space for powerful connection. Rule number 1, nobody gets to be wrong. Rule number 2, nobody gets to be right. Rule number 3, everybody gets to be vulnerable. Rule number 4, everything is included. We do not edit here. This conversation is exactly what it needs to be in this moment in time. We've asked our guests to join us via video to allow us to create authentic connection. Eyes are the window to the soul. You will be seen here. You will be heard here. There is space for you here. Conversation is meant to be a dance, an ebb and flow, a back and forth exchange of energies, thoughts, and emotions. The wit we bring to this conversation releases an endorphin known as the painkiller. You actually feel better when you laugh. The wisdom we bring to the conversation will be seen in the nuggets of information that you take and apply to your own life. When this conversation comes to a close, I will ask you, our listeners, and our guests 3 questions. If you tuned in before, you know what they are. If you haven't, you don't want to miss them, so stay tuned. And don't forget to write us a review on Apple Podcast or over at Podbean or YouTube at Outstanding Women Leaders. And don't forget to check out my website, owlprofessionalcoaching.com. There's a lot more content on there than there is on the podcast. You can also read my writing and other stuff, so Owl Professional Coaching. But enough about me and Outstanding Women Leaders. Today, we have an amazing guest all the way from the UK. We are finally officially international. I've been saying that we are. Wait, no, I take that back. I have someone else who is in Sweden, but she hasn't aired yet. So, but yeah, we're doing it. Super excited. So it's Anthea Armar is born, Armar. Sorry, say your last name for me again.
Armar.
Armar. I have an American accent. I was supposed to say it differently and I didn't. Here we are. She is a mindset and weight loss coach, helping ambitious women struggling to find balance or purpose in their life overcome health and mindset challenges to live fearlessly. She's also, her background is she's a learning professional with over 15 years training in instructional design, experience working within a variety of public and private sector organizations, transport and logistics, sales, IT, financial, oil and gas. I know nothing about any of those things. Her key focus is on designing and implementing training strategies to deliver national technology change and transformation programs. After being out of work for 3 months, she was walking and saw a random ad for traveling around the world for 3 months and thought, well, what if I had done that instead of trying to chase a job? And so she did, and went on an amazing adventure that led to more travel. And she's been traveling and photographing her travels ever since. And has gotten into coaching. And I can tell you from the 30 minutes I just spent talking to her, plus the previous time I spoke to her, she's an amazing coach. I can already tell she's a fantastic conversationalist. So welcome. Let's get you in this conversation already.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yes. So tell us about going on an adventure, 3-month travel.
So the 3 months relates to the time that I was out of work, and so just kind of deciding to travel somewhere. It's a bit funny. I'm like that. So I know that the offer of 3 months was there, but I'm like, but what if we just added another week? What if we added another month? And so we ended up going for 5. So I don't know how it happened. I'm very much somebody who prays, and I believe my prayers were answered. I managed to get a job which essentially funded that trip. So I didn't even have to concern myself really about money when I went. And we literally left the UK, turned left, and then just carried on. And we visited, I think in total, about 14 countries across that whole trip. And it's just the most eye-opening, kind of extraordinary experience I've ever had. I mean, when you live kind of like this side of the water, it's kind of where we tend to go the most is Europe. And so obviously nothing against Europe, but we don't travel as far afield as much. So we just kind of see a bit more samey. But going to like India and Singapore and Malaysia and Thailand, which was my absolute favorite place, it was just, and I really get it when people say it was like a breath of fresh air. It's really hard to describe it, but other than that, just that feeling of, feeling cooped up for so long, and then you go outside, and then that fresh air hits you, and all of a sudden in that moment you just feel free. That's what it was. It was just pure freedom.
I love
I just
that.
loved it.
I also
Loved it.
I've been told this several times, which is why I describe myself as this. I also am like a breath of fresh air for people when I come in and I'm just, honest and witty and sarcastic and making jokes. Most people don't do that the first time that they meet someone. Sometimes authenticity can feel like a breath of fresh air, which is what I'm hearing about your travels, by the way, because, right? What is it? I have not traveled. I proclaimed my year of 2020 to be the year of travel, and the universe had other plans.
Right.
What is that like to experience other cultures? What new insights does that give you as a human, as a coach?
And I think that's probably the most important word. It's the human aspect of it, because all we know about the world is what we see on television, and that is a completely biased and skewed view of the world. So when you go out there and you go to these places that we've been told all of our lives that are just like, it's poverty, there's corruption, there's all of these things, and you're just completely, you can tell that you're a tourist. Like, everyone knows I'm not from India, like everyone knows I'm not from Singapore, like it's just that obvious. And you go to these places, and I think Singapore was probably one of the friendliest places I've ever been. We literally got off the plane and were just looking like actual backpackers, having no idea where we were going to sleep or where we were going to go. And the pilot decides to stop, put his briefcase down, and ask us, are we okay? And then proceeds to give us directions to somewhere that we could probably find a bed that night. I'm just like, nobody does that in the world. And so you go into these places and you're just seeing, all of the, I guess, the biases that you've created based on what you've seen and heard completely just unravel. You no longer just go and expect people to be, negative, or you can't be happy because you're poor, or you can't be this because you're dealing with this kind of situation. And you go around the world and you literally just see humans living life regardless of their circumstances, right? So I'm in London, and it's kind of like, okay, we have and I say this about kids all the time because I've got nephews, nieces, and godchildren, right? And it's like, what it's like. They'll run down, they might fall over, and it's woe is me. Oh my God, the world is going to end. And so in their world as humans, little humans that they are, these are the things that are just going to completely devastate them in life. But then they get up and then they run and they play and they trip over the same thing you just told them not to trip over, right? And so when you go out into the world, it's the same thing. We're judging everyone based on how we live, but they just adapt to the world that exists around them. And so that's what I really love, because you just get to see how people just adapt, right? You just grow up wherever you grow up, you interact with whoever you interact with, and depending on the kind of people that you meet, they're either going to be really friendly and also curious, because they're not used to seeing different types of people come into their country or, you know, have a conversation. We've got language barriers, but we've still had the most interesting of conversations, just trying to, you know, point and kind of like point to different parts of the body, or, you know, turning left and right and all of that. And then it just kind of breaks everything down, because you realize that, yeah, we may speak differently, we might look slightly different and all of those kind of things, but we're still the same. You know, we could still say that we want to eat, we could still say that we need to find a bathroom, we could still say we want to go, you know, and take photos or whatever, and people will understand us, and people can see that we're upset, they can see that we're happy, we can see all of those emotions. And so when you go and you see just that, the happiness and the community and the culture part of it, I think, was the biggest thing for me. And just seeing people so happy, and the colors, especially like, so when we were in places like, I'd probably say, yeah, like Singapore and Thailand, those kind of places, Cambodia especially, they had this this cultural center, and it was kind of celebrating cultures around the world. And all I remember is music and color. Like, it didn't matter what country they were representing, there was just always a song to go with it, and there was always just this influx of color. And it just makes life less boring, right? We're just all mostly living grey lives, and then you go and witness the world in all of its color and happiness and laughter, and, you know, and people just making effort to just communicate with other people. It's just, so it's really it would be difficult for me to pinpoint like one like truly amazing thing. I just think being exposed is
Yeah.
probably the biggest thing.
You know, what I came up for me when I heard you talking was just a lot of embodiment of,
Right.
right, of just really connecting your mind, heart, soul, your entire being, because there's nothing else happening, like, you know. And when I say I haven't traveled internationally, but I feel like teaching on the south side of Chicago and teaching on the north side of Chicago even, it's not a cultural experience that a lot of Americans will have. For me, the north side of Chicago felt like traveling, because we had so many different countries that were represented. I got to really get a unique sense of like what it was. Our Korean students, we had about a 10% population, right? And really understanding their culture in a much deeper level because of that, or even the motivations of their culture, of why they send them, which was interesting. And then going on the south side of Chicago and also experiencing what it is like to be in a really tough area in Chicago, and how kids adapt. You talked about cultures adapting, like that's what I really thought about there. And the happiness, we're so busy telling people what happiness looks like and how you achieve it, money, status, like,
Right.
you know, it's, when we talk about poor people, I think people are talking about they need these things to be happy, or they need like to live, like, and then you travel and you see that that's really not true. You know, you don't need those things to be fulfilled,
Not at all.
to feel joy. I think we sometimes
Right.
confuse happiness with the joy or the fulfillment.
Yeah, and and it's interesting because I remember seeing somebody posted something, and what it was I think there was a child, I think it's probably about 9 or 10, and I'm not sure where, I think he might have been Ghana or something like that, and he'd essentially made what we would call like a digger. So he had made this thing where it moved to one side, picked up some sand and stones or whatever, and moved it to another side. And I remember looking at the comments of that, and people were just like, it's just, you know, it's just some sand and stones and some branches. And they completely missed the point. You know, when you're in a place where you don't necessarily have much. For me, I was looking at that boy as a genius. I'm like, look how innovative that is. Like, you've got nothing around you but trees and sand, and of all the things to do, you've decided to create this thing which, you know, could be made to mine, or, you know, whatever. Like, there's so much you can get from it. But then people who are closed-minded just see that this child couldn't possibly be happy because he doesn't have toys to play with, or he can't possibly be happy because he doesn't have much. And you just think to yourself, but this is where the balance, this is where the balance tips, because somebody who can be happy in whatever environment they are in, irrespective of how much money they have the secret that all of us need,
Well,
right?
that everyone's seeking,
Right?
right? Like
And we
therapy
would
is a,
pay money for that.
a big industry, and so are all these retreats and like all the things. Yeah, I mean, that's, people used to be the fountain of youth, but we're really, people, that's what people are seeking, is fulfillment.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I was in nonprofit, I can't remember what TED Talk I watched or where I was in the moment, but I remember hearing about a place that didn't have access to water, and so they would walk 5 miles to get water, and they would bring it back. And so we come over and say, well, water is a basic need. Everybody has a right to water. Let me get you water. And what happened is, well, the women had a lot of autonomy, as they had this, they walked together, and it was part of their daily ritual. Like, we talk about morning ritual here. Like, if you just get a morning ritual and you do your meditation and like you write your gratitude, like, right, your life will be better. Like that, it dramatically shifted their culture in a way that no one anticipated having a negative impact. Shoes is another one. Like, we think of Tom's shoes and why we want to buy them, and there were people that were making shoes. You actually kind of, if you want capitalism, you've just driven it out, and but also you took away someone's livelihood. There was another one that talked about a man with chickens, and they, even after there was some type of major disaster, and so even after the major disaster was over, America kept sending over chickens, and that was how this man lived, was selling his chickens, but people would have to walk to him. And so it's interesting when you say, like, this is, people have it made, like, leave us alone.
Right?
But I'm
You
hearing
don't need your
it.
intervention.
Well, yeah, I mean, when you're solving problems, sometimes you create problems along the way.
Right. Yeah. I definitely think it's, I don't know. I feel like I say, just from what I've seen when I've been traveling, it's just that the human ability to adapt, and, you know, judging other people based on what we experience. So we could be there and we're like, but I'm not happy, and you've got less than me, so how could you be happy? And we kind of project our, you know, our levels or our standards of happiness and things like that on other people. But actually those people are really happy because, like you say, they've got that sense of community now. They're walking 5 miles a day, they're getting physical exercise, you know, they've got physical activity,
Socialization, yeah.
social, they've probably got good emotional health because they're able to communicate how they're feeling in the safety and the space of people who would understand what they're going through. If they were just sat at home and someone was bringing water to them, you know, they could be in an environment where they don't feel safe to have those conversations. You know, there's so much more to it than just what it looks like on the surface. And that's, you know, why it's really important to, I guess, I've always been somebody who's I suppose a deep thinker, somebody who's always self-reflecting, because it's really important to understand that just the way that I've grown up is not how everyone else experiences life, right? We have our own belief systems, we've got our own experiences, and so that's why we're so shocked when people say things and do things, because we're like, this doesn't fit into my bubble. I don't understand. Why would you say this? Like, you just have this thing where you have these expectations of people, and, you know, it's just because of how we are.
Yeah.
And that's why, even if you know, travel is only just one way. You know, another way of kind of just getting a good grasp on the differences in the world is to literally look in the mirror, is to get a hobby, do something that challenges you to even just be by yourself, because I find that a lot of people really struggle with that. they find it really difficult. And, you know, even during this whole pandemic, when you're asking people, you know, what are you going to do with this time? Some people are just like, but I'm alone. I don't know what to do. And I'm like, oh my God, this is the best time to be alone. Like, you've got all the time in the world to just do you, like, figure out what
It's
makes
a
you
great time to
happy.
travel solo domestically in the US because
Yeah.
they're not letting us in anywhere. But we're a huge country. And so like I did a solo trip last October, which kind of led me on this path of waking up in January and saying, I'm going for this business. I went to the mountains. And I went to Salt Lake City, Utah, which is Mormon country. And it's beautiful. I mean, they've built a beautiful downtown city. And then I went to Park City and I climbed some mountains. I went to the Salt Lake Flats, and you can't help but be that same beauty of nature that you talk about seeing in humans. Like, when do we look at the curves of a mountain, and when do we really immerse ourselves in just what the universe has given us to look at? We're so busy looking for like the thing we want to hang on our wall that looks nice, that we're not taking in the stuff that really exists. That was really powerful for me. And that was the second time I traveled alone. When I got divorced, I couch surfed. So I stayed on strangers' couches. One stranger,
Wow.
Faith McFluff. I figure she was a hooper. Like the hoops, she would teach exercise.
Oh, hula hoops. Okay.
Yeah, like there were like these metal hoops. She was fitness. She had owned some businesses. She had lived in Europe. She got kicked out, I think, if I remember correctly. She didn't kill anyone. She wasn't like an Amanda Knox. I think maybe she did. I don't know. Anyway, nobody gets to be right or wrong about that. I love these new perspectives. And so you come back and you've built a coaching business now, and you kind of fell into it naturally, which is how I fell into coaching fitness and nutrition as well. I had my own huge weight loss experience. CrossFit for me was that seeing things from a different perspective. That was the moment when I was teaching on the South Side that I let go of those judgments I had about what high school kids should be doing, which is going to college, because that's what we were told is the only way to be successful.
Right.
And I'm like, that's such bullshit. And we should not, it's detrimental to tell children. Particularly when like one of, Stevie Beats has a business, and he had a business then, like we just need to give some business classes. He didn't need algebra 2. And telling a kid, if you don't go to college and that kid already hates high school and well, you're going to be a failure. You have 2 choices. No, there's a lot more choices out there. And I found that, I think, in part through my fitness, because I know you said it, do something that challenges you to be by yourself. Well, I didn't want to do that in fitness. I had done that enough and that wasn't working for me. But I also didn't really want to work out. And when I saw for coaching, like having someone there like you is, I had to be by myself about food. And right. And so for me, the workout, the community, like the coaching, like that kept me there. But the real work happened when I had to be with what I didn't want to be with, which was by myself, staring at a cupcake, choosing not to eat it.
Yeah, and I completely resonate with that, because I mean, I suppose 2 things. The first one was around the whole thing about going to college and stuff. Yeah, totally been through there. Kind of felt like I was forced through that decision of doing it, because we were told that we would have certain things off the back of going, which none of them really came true. So I went to university, accrued all of this debt, and didn't do really.
Yes. And it used to be, you'd ask the kid, what do you want to be when you grow up? Like, what do you want to do? Like, do you want to work with your hands? Like, do you want to sit at a computer? Like, even there, you could ask better questions than that. Like, what do you value? Right. But at least, what do you want to do? Like, that's what my mom's generation was better than, do you want to go to college or do you want to work at McDonald's? Because those are not the only 2 options. And it's BS.
They really aren't.
Right?
And the thing is if you know exactly who you are and what you want to do, like my sister is a lawyer, so she knew, and that's definitely something it's worthwhile going to university for. But if you're not, I think it's worthwhile just exploring life, because you can get so much understanding about yourself,
Yeah.
through that whole thing. And so even so, like I was saying, like with mine, I went through transformation as well. I lost, I think it's about 50 odd pounds, and that was a really tough thing because I'd been overweight pretty much most of my life. And it was just because I wasn't necessarily like a real emotional eater or anything like that. It was just a lack of knowledge, right? Just a lack of knowledge about nutrition and the importance of moving and stuff like that. So when I'd gotten into that, I'd lost my first 21 pounds, and I wasn't even happy at that point, which was just really weird for me to understand, because the whole weight loss thing is something that we think if we lose weight, that will fix this. And it never does, because it's never the real reason we want to lose weight. It's just the first physical thing that we can see, and so we focus on that because everyone else can see it, and we believe everyone else is judging us. They're not. It's just us judging ourselves. And so going through that journey, and which is probably what led me to coaching, which I hadn't known at the time, is turning that mirror toward myself and saying, why are you not happy? What is it that's going on in your life that you have not healed from? And because what we do is we're very good at that fight or flight mechanism, and most of us don't fight. And so when we fly, what we're actually doing is just using coping mechanisms and storing all of these unresolved issues inside of us that we never deal with. And so thinking that the weight loss will fix it and doesn't is because we still got all of this mess that we haven't cleared up. And so when you go on that journey and you kind of look at yourself and figure out, and this is something that I try to explain to my clients at the moment, is that the weight loss is not just nutrition and fitness. That's just one aspect of it. Do you have strong relationships? Do you have people that can support you? What do you do in your lifestyle? What life have you created for yourself? What limiting beliefs do you have that make you believe that this is all you can ever be? And it's really pushing through pretty much everything we believed about ourselves. And like we were talking about previously, it's rewriting your story. And I know that probably sounds a bit corny me saying it, but it is literally just rewriting the story. And what I found interesting is that one of the reasons why you really need to have that or do that inner work initially is because you have to be very strong against the same people that you believe will support you, because they won't get it. And you have to do that initial journey alone. And what will happen is, over a period of time, they will come and they will say, how did you do it? Help me do it. And I'm kidding you not. And that is literally how I got into coaching, because I qualified in fitness, and then I ended up teaching classes, and then I started running weight loss groups at work just to help people out. I wasn't even thinking about it from a business perspective, but it was just giving them hints and tips. And the feedback that I always got was not, oh, it's so great that I've lost XX weight. It was always, you helped me realize that it was okay for me to go to a restaurant and meet my friends for dinner. It was okay if there was a day that I didn't feel like getting up to work out. It was basically saying that it's okay to be human. Just because we want to lose
Yes, to
weight,
not be
we don't have to be a rock,
perfect.
right? And that is exactly what it is. And that's what I really just want to teach people, is that you remember that you're human first, and not a single one of us on this earth is perfect. So what we have to do is navigate through our imperfections whilst trying to be better, right? And I have this quote that seemed to resonate with most people. I like to say that your dream life is only a mindset shift away, because what I found is where people can change their perspective of the same situation, they're able to get much better results. And it's not that it's not that the situation has changed, it's just how they perceive it, and how they can now believe that they can push through and do something else, rather than just be stuck in this vicious cycle where they're always in that I can't mode. And so that's really, like the beginning of March, really, sorry, the beginning of April is where I kind of got led into this coaching. And one of my clients who went on my 4-week program, she actually did lose 7 pounds in the 4 weeks. And she was really surprised because I didn't give her a food plan and I didn't give her a fitness plan, even though she asked for it. I was like, no, please just trust me. I know what I'm doing. I can help you, but make changes. And the changes that she made were all changes that she decided to make. They weren't ones that I forced on her. They weren't ones that I said, work out 4 times a week. I don't have time. Like, until I'm able to get to that point to make time,
Yeah.
just let me just live. Let me be human and I'll get there.
I
But it's a
love hearing your
process.
story because so I left when I got divorced. I sold my gym. I stopped doing weight loss coaching. I had some grieving and some putting the pieces back together to do. And as I've been coaching, I hadn't thought about my weight loss program. And I think the reason why was because people always say, "Oh, I want to lose weight." But they don't want to do the work on themselves.
Right.
If you position yourself in that, what I'm hearing is this woman trusts you, and just gets my wheels turning about, because that's exactly how I would do it as well. I don't know if you have them journal or do anything with self-awareness, but I love it as my recipe for weight loss is very similar to yours. And like, I'm not going to give you a meal plan. I'm not going to give you a fitness routine. I am going to ask you to eat breakfast. And that's what I'm going to ask you to do. And here are some ideas of things I like to have
Right.
for breakfast that fit this bucket of eating breakfast, right? So we determine breakfast is not something you unwrap. and like that would be, my and like, let's do that for a month. And that can, because you're going to fail at eating breakfast in that month or that first 2 weeks, and that's okay.
It's okay.
It's
right.
okay. Consistency over time creates habits, and then you're going to want to create that next habit. But it really has to come from that person. And I think so often people come to you, like these people are, for weight loss, and it's bigger, and you're helping them get there, and versus just saying, okay, great. And we call that like the big agenda for the client and the little agenda, right? The little agenda is losing weight, and they think it's their big agenda. They're like, no, this is my big agenda. If I just do this, right? There's a much bigger agenda than that. And I found that I had built the life I wanted. I had a gym. It was in a 10,000 square foot facility. Like, my feet are propped up. I've got my glass of tequila. I'm surrounded by windows. I've got it made.
Right.
And I'm like, why am I unhappy? And I had attracted some personal training clients into my life. I only was doing personal training at that point. I was the true entrepreneur working on the business, not in the business. But loved coaching individuals. And the clients I were attracting was this client that was a mess, but like outwardly sharing her mess of a marriage with cheating, like all the things that you think of as a messy marriage minus the physical abuse, and a child. And she's like, I think we're gonna have a baby. I'm like, what?
Oh, wow.
But what it really, I think subconsciously, it's like, I'm always evaluating myself, as you said, like that deep thinker. Although I couldn't quite make the connection initially, I always do what my clients are doing. So we threw our shit, we threw a sled on our backs to drag, and that shit was a metaphor. And like, I walk them through as we work out, and realized, wow, my marriage is a mess. Right? Like that judgment, I think sometimes that we have of others. And so I found, as I was coaching someone and helping them, and I was coaching myself, which I know we talked about, like that happens over time.
Yeah, I think I don't know if it is, and I think attract is probably the right word. is that sometimes I think we end up attracting, because to a degree, especially in coaching, there's only so far you can take a person if you haven't been through it yourself. And it's not necessarily to say that you've been through their specific experience. It's saying that you are willing to do the work on yourself in the same way you're asking your clients to.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right? So if we're not shining that mirror on our face, if we're not doing that self-reflection, if we're not waking up and saying, how can I be better today? How can we actually encourage or empower anyone else to do the same?
100%. And so what I realized is, like, I had judged that client. I really had. And you can't be a coach if you're judging your client. You just can't.
No.
And that was 6 years ago. And I got my own coach because I think people should get a coach. And so this year in January, I started a business. I got a coach. I didn't get a business coach. Got a life coach.
Good decision.
Right? And 100%, I can't with these business coaches. I've owned a business. I can coach myself. By the way, if you have a business and you want some coaching on a business, I had a multiple six-figure business that everybody talks about. And you don't have, but this time I don't have the brick and mortar. So when I make my multiple six figures, it won't be going out the door to pay the government and my employees and my landlord and my business partners. So that was the order, by the way, that everybody got their little paycheck. So I hired a life coach because I wanted to go through a program and get my own certification and do the deep work and the coactive training. I just finished, so I'm just bragging about myself a little bit here. But hey, I feel like traveling accomplishes something pretty dang similar to what I felt in the coactive experience. And mine was online because of COVID. And so I met people from all over the world. And where I started out was like meeting people and summing them up and comparing whether or not I was a better coach. Like, that's judgment and insecurity, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was very reflective of the mindset that I was in when I first started and the shift that happened so quickly. And I imagine that is what happened for you on the travel. So when you talked about there's other ways to do
Sure.
that, I think the universe heard my call to travel this year, to see exactly what you just talked about, and just gave it to me in a Zoom meeting. 105 hours. And
Wow.
and I'm looking forward to traveling in 2021 to London to see you, to all over. I have a girlfriend in London as well.
Definitely.
And hosting like some fun workshops together, and
I like the sound of that.
yeah, like sharing these ingredients for our recipe.
Yes.
For reinvention and revision. You know, I think we're constantly rewriting our stories.
Mm-hmm.
And the reinvention for me that's taken place is a really deep look into my purpose and my values, which I imagine you probably had on your travels.
Right.
Yeah.
And still doing. And I think that's probably one of the things, is because I think what I've learned is that we kind of have this thing that we arrive somewhere and we're done. I've lost that way, or I've done that thing, I've created that business, I've finished. But it's never finished. And I don't say that to, make people think, oh my God, I have to do this forever. Like, it's not like, it's not that kind of thing, but it is just an ongoing journey. And the positive thing about that means that if you're not happy with where you are, you're not finished. Like, you can still change, you can still turn things around, you can still rewrite your story. And that's what's really good, is because where sometimes people are, I guess, somewhat limited in what they think they can achieve, even in that small achievement, when they get to that point, it just expands their mind. So then they're like, oh, actually, I'm going to dream even bigger now. And then they start dreaming bigger and doing bigger. And the benefit of that is that it impacts everybody, because everybody who believed that they could only play small in this world are now seeing people who are just, exceeding their own expectations, and they're now literally leveling up, because they're like, right, well, if you can do that, we grew up in the same neighborhood or whatever, I can do that too. And so this whole journey is ongoing, and exactly what you were talking about. I've been doing that through this kind of COVID period too. It's kind of looking at, well, what are my values? And, you know, especially trying to go into coaching, everyone's like, pick a niche, do this, do this. And you're just like, my gosh, quiet in the noise for a minute. And I'm like, but why can't I actually help everyone? Like, and so then you start to think, well, should I just do everything that everyone else is doing because that's what they're saying works? Or should I hold out and say, actually, no, I've been through this myself. I know why I was able to lose the weight that time, or I know why I was able to, you know, get that job, or go contracting and do my own thing and go against the grain each and every time. And the thing that I've realized is that every single time I've made a decision to not do what everyone else is telling me to do, I'm here chatting to Katie, like I'm still here, like, you know, so wherever I end up, it will always bring me where I need to be. So I'm never that fussed about what everyone else is doing. And I think it's really important, like you say, you know, what are my core values? What is it that I want to contribute to this world? And especially during this period of time where you think about how many people are losing their lives, how many people are losing their livelihood. And for me to be able to come out and say, you know, especially from a health perspective right now, where so many people are so focused on the guidelines, but what we're saying is, yes, they're there. I'm sorry, they're not all there to support you, but the one thing you have control of is your freedom. It's your ability to be healthy, to find happiness, to do things in life that give you a fulfilling life. So that, because even I said, even if I was to go, I've enjoyed life. Like, I've just enjoyed life, you know? So my time is my time whenever it's going to happen. But what I'm not going to do is sit in a room scared because the world is a scary place and I'm worried about failing, or I'm worried about doing this or that. I have to be very firm and learn who I am, what I stand for, and what I can contribute to this world, and just do it. It may not always work, but who knows, in 2 years I'll be back speaking to Katie, like, you know, you think, you just never know where it will bring you.
Yeah. How does, so I'm getting a list of key ingredients for this recipe that you're sharing. I have
Okay.
ignore what everyone else is doing, which
Right.
I really love, because I do that, but then I start to judge myself for doing that in the, well, like, I know these things are right. Like, I know there's some key marketing principles that are correct. But I also know that I want to disrupt. And so I can't do this, all the same key marketing principles, right? Like, I know I have a website, like I get, but the social media one, then picking the niche, like speaking to your audience, I just get lost in the lack, for me, of the value of authenticity, the freedom, the flexibility, like, and yeah, it's the noise.
It's stressful.
It is, and that is a key ingredient to anything you're going to want to do, because people will pop up in unexpected places and prevent you from, or try and prevent you from doing something that really speaks to your sense of purpose and your values. When you talked about like what you want to leave on the world, like that impact, what comes up for me is I think of my Black friends who are struggling right now, and like, how, like, I don't know what to say to them as a coach or a friend, to say, yeah, the world's really fucking bad right now, but what you're doing right now and the impact that you're making, like, that's important, and there's joy there. You know, it's hard for people to find joy right now, depending particularly on where you live in the country.
Do you know, so I think the older me would have agreed, but I feel like there's joy to be found everywhere. Like, happiness is actually a choice. The problem is that the way in which our minds are wired based on the experiences and the beliefs that we have sometimes mean that we overlook the happiness and we focus on the negative things that we're having in life. Like, the fact that we're at the moment alive and breathing is a positive thing. And that means in that life, in that breath that I have, there is something that I can wake up to to do today which will make some kind of impact. Like literally whenever I get up, one of the things that I pray and all of that kind of stuff, one of the things that I always say is, how can I serve today? Who can I help today? Because we don't know if something that we say, something that we do, someone who happens to see us could change someone else's reality in that moment. It could change their perspective. It could change, a decision that they were going to make, which could have maybe had a negative effect on something. It could make them change their perspective so that they're doing something positive. So it's like a ripple effect. And with the whole thing that's going on with the Black Lives Movement, the Matter and all of that, it's difficult because it depends on who you speak to. Because on one hand, people will say, we don't want sympathy, because we don't. And I mean, being a Black woman in England, I know that there's a lot of differences in how we're treated than in the US, but I faced a lot of the same issues. I know I've not got jobs because of my name. I know I've not got jobs because of what I look like. I know I've not been promoted because of what I look like. And even one of the most recent roles that I had, I made a suggestion for how they should restructure, and part of that restructure would have had me leading it, and it never happened. What happened in the end was that idea was later, 3 to 6 months later, reconditioned and brought back in so that it would be led by someone else and I would report into them. So, this is the kind of stuff that we end up having to deal with. And unless you've been in that experience, it's difficult to understand what that is. But the one thing that you can do is just use your platform, is use your voice. When you wake up, and the thing is especially for you, where you're talking about you're somebody who wants to disrupt, it's doing that. It's having the conversation. Even if you don't know what to say, ask them, I want to talk about this, but I have no idea what to say. What can we talk about? How can I help? And they may say to you, you can't. They may say to you, not right now.
I mean, I've done that. I'm good enough friends, right? Where I've asked. I love that advice though. And I think for all of our white listeners, asking, how can I hold space for you right now?
Mm-hmm.
What do you need? Type of questions are really important. And we have to hold space for people that are struggling. And for me, holding space also is offering like, hey, I have a really great therapist if you're grieving, because
right.
there's a lot to grieve right now. It's not, you need a coach, you need to think about the future. I think one of the ways I've held space for my friends is recognizing the grief. Because I feel sad for our world too. But I'm so focused on disrupting and changing it that I am not living in constant grief. And I know that's not true for everyone. And that's a privilege that I have where I feel like, and I think, I don't know how you feel about that, because you're also doing that, like, right? Like you're focused on how you can change the world. Like, I think that's a mindset privilege that we can both give to anyone. But I do look at that as a privilege to be able to stay focused and want to make an impact.
And I think that's probably more important because it's all about having a voice. And the sad thing is not all of us have a voice, and even though that's our entitlement as human beings, not all of us, when we speak, are heard. And so if you can speak and you can be heard, then you just have to be mindful about what you're saying, and being bold enough to stand up for what is right, not necessarily to protect yourself from people who may disagree with your opinion. Like, this is not a time to be sat on a fence. You're either in it or you're not. And if you're in it, be fully in it. Don't be in it because you want to be seen to be helping. This isn't something that just passes. I mean, outside of coaching and other things like that, there's other things that I'm doing because it's kind of like, I don't know what I can do. I mean, I'm Black and I still don't know what I can do, right? So it's that whole thing of, what can I do today? you know, because sometimes the problem is that we try to think too big. We try to say what in the world needs to be done, and we want to attack it all. But I mean, you know, from a coaching experience, the first thing that when your clients come to you and they say, yes, I want to do all of this, you say, okay, let's now look at what's the one step. What's the first step that we can take to move you closer? And that's all we need to do, is just take that first step, and not think that, you know, hundreds and hundreds of years of, you know, oppression and trauma and all of these things are going to be fixed in a year. You know, it's not going to be. It's going to take time. So
Yeah.
how can we help the conversation along? How can we spread awareness? How can we use the talents and gifts that we have to help people? Because even if we're using them in different ways, like for example, even if I have somebody come to me, and even if it's not for weight loss and I'm still coaching them, it's, you know, self-confidence, they want to start a business or whatever, having that one person think about doing something positive which could impact their circle and change that circle's mindset, who then have their own network and their own circle, and we impact them. You know, it all starts with one, and there's so much we can do. We don't always have to go for the big agenda, right? We
Yes.
could
Yeah,
right,
sometimes the little
right.
agendas support the big agenda.
There we go.
I love
Exactly. So
that. I love
yeah.
that. And when I look at my big agenda, I have a card somewhere over here because I'm a note card person because I'm an elder millennial. But part of my big agenda, I have my values, and
Right.
one of my values is diversity. It's diversity of thought, which is why I need to travel so I can get more thoughts. That's why I really enjoyed the coactive going online for COVID, because there was a lot more color in the room in a diversity, in addition to diversity of countries. A lot of the countries typically are European, so you're just looking at like a different flavor of yourself, right? Um, and so that was that. It's just, those are my people. Like I feel like a room where the diversity is naturally going to, like, that's a place where I can learn and just come with that open mind. And that's a huge value of mine. Freedom and flexibility, like those things are values of mine. That's on my big agenda. And so when I think about my little agendas, I want to honor that. And so one of the ways that I'm building my business to honor diversity, I'm going with the B Corp model when I hit 1 year. And so Tom Shoes is a B Corp, 1-to-1. I want to offer 1-to-1 for my team program. And so, but not in the way where, well, at least my classes will be full, so I guess technically it would be a 1-to-1. But I was really more just thinking of it as like half of my classes will be scholarship based, and I will give away scholarships for it, so that my classes are diverse in income diversity levels, and that will, of course, they're in America, like that naturally. It just also, my networks of where I've worked will end up also giving it ethnic diversity as well, which really honors that value. So I think it's important, like now in COVID, I think we have an opportunity where people whose big agendas didn't include diversity as a value, it can, but it's going to take a lot of little agenda, like a lot of coaching to help people. You know, we can say that we want that and we put that on these fancy mission statements for businesses, but there's a lot of little agendas that have to take place within the company to really live out that big agenda. And
Agreed.
I think now is an incredible time in the world for it to really happen, because everybody's, you know, it's a pandemic, and so I guess for me, I really this is the Pollyanna in me, but I'm hopeful. I'm really hopeful for our generation and the one coming up, which is why I have a teen program, and what my program focuses on is the neuroscience and understanding the brain. And I think if we understand our brain, we will understand bias, we will understand our judgments, and that we can build better leaders that don't go into the workforce with these judgments and with these biases. That's my disruption that I want to do to make happen.
That sounds brilliant. And yeah, that is definitely needed, because a lot of people want to focus on the outcome of things. So, it's the things that you can see, and just fixing those and putting plasters over them. But actually, when you get deep down, and that's why, again, it comes down to wanting to, I'm willing to be doing this inner work and saying, let me challenge everything I know to be true. It could be that some of it's true, and that's fine, I've validated it. But for the other things that, I don't like about myself, or I don't like, how I treat others, or I don't like how I handle these situations, we're just so used to just accepting that that's who we are. But it's not. It's just who we are in that moment, because we've not made a change. We basically decide who we are going to be. But until we make that decision, we're just going to keep existing based on the belief systems that we've grown up with. And so understanding the brain, because I recently did a survey. There's a course that I want to create in the new year, and it's partial weight loss, but it's more than that. It's about who do I need to be to essentially have the body that I want, because that's going to take work. That's going to take a change in your perspective. It's going to make sure that you understand how to be happy regardless of what size you are. And so when I did the survey, I kind of just in the process of trying to validate the idea, and somebody actually responded when I said, well, what one thing would need to be in this course in order for you to, for it to be a no-brainer. And they actually said to understand the psychology of why people are even overweight. Why do we overeat, and why is it that the things that make us overweight are just so accessible? And that's something that people really want to know, because we just get thrown all of these things in life and we're just told that this is how it is. But actually there has to be something more behind it. And it's just the way the world is constructed. But we can choose, I'm just going to sound really corny now, but we can choose to rewrite the story. Like, we can just decide that that's no longer how we're going to live, or what we're going to base our decisions on. We can just create a new list. Like, we hold the power for what we do in our own lives. We still have the power. Forget the governments and all of those things, because they only dictate to us the boundaries in which we need to exist. But we have the power. If you woke up today and said, I'm going to go and eat an entire chocolate cake, like, nobody else was part of that decision making process but you, right? It's a good decision if it's a good cake, right? But if you also decided that today was the day that I'm going to write my business plan because I'm sick of working for someone else and I want to have my own business, you decide that. There's no circumstance that exists around you that tells you which one you should do. You always have the choice. And so
Yeah.
getting to understand, like, the brain and the psychology is just, it's a really fascinating subject. Really fascinating subject.
Yeah, and I like to talk with clients about the dualities that exist in life and how that just naturally exists in your brain. You have your amygdala, you have your survivor brain, because getting to adulthood is literally a survival. Like, have you been on the playground? You're dodging a lot of bullets. Like, there's cholera before, like now it's COVID. Like, getting to adulthood is surviving. And so when you've arrived at 25 to 30, when your prefrontal cortex is fully developed, so let's just say 30. I like to say 30. It makes me feel better. Like, maybe I was a slower prefrontal developer. So I've only had 7 years of being an adult. All right. So don't judge me as much. But we get there. And so then we have like full capacity to always be here. But we aren't there by the time we reach that age, because our survivor is really strong. And we've got some defaults that have gotten us to that place. And it is the mystery to me of the brain on how you wouldn't just naturally choose to be in your prefrontal cortex, higher level thinking brain that is positive, it's empathetic, it's creative, it's a doer, like it's a problem solver. Why you wouldn't want to spend all of your time there? why your mind will naturally gravitate back towards its thriving brain is such a mystery. But we also know the location of it is right next to your short-term and long-term memory and your emotional brain. And it just lets us know how strong, like, we've survived for millions of years, obviously for a reason, our ability to detect danger. And I had Veronica Kieran was on my podcast, and she talked about her desk having millions of things on it right now. She's like, I'm not aware of any of it, you know, but if there was a bug that was placed, or like someone came by and put a fake, you know, thing, like, you would notice that. Like, your
That
brain...
was me yesterday.
Oh my gosh. So we just moved, and I saw for the first time in my life a cockroach the size of my thumb.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I feel
And
you.
I now know what a Hollywood bloody murder scream feels like in my body. I don't know that I ever knew that. And my partner had the choice, right? Like, he gets into like his, you know, I'm going to protect this woman mode of like, do I grab the gun? That's my man. Or, so he's like, are you okay? I'm like, I like
cockroach.
And then I'm like, I was embarrassed immediately. Like, I know it wasn't that big of a deal. And like, Dan came in and saved the day, but, and then called someone to spray immediately the next day. Like, I've never seen that. We had a drop.
I feel you, because yeah, cockroaches are, yes, definitely sent from the devil.
Like, I can't have that in my home. And it's taken care of, but whew, yeah, I just felt that as we talked about it. So that's our brain. Like, that's what it's designed to do. It's designed to pull us into that space. And it's hard to change that pattern. So when you think of a food pattern, if you think of it gaining weight, you've got some really strong neural pathways there that are going to take some time to shrink as you build new neural pathways and find joy in other things. Like, for me, I found a lot of joy in the community I built. For me, that's a key ingredient in my recipe for people. I heard you talk about challenging, you know it to be true as a key ingredient, and I love that. And I'm just curious, what other key ingredients do you have today?
So I think for me, one of the main ones is a willingness to do it alone if needed. And the only reason, and I say that mainly from experience, because it's funny, you have conversations a lot of the time and you say you want to lose weight and then it doesn't really work out. But this time I'm going to do it this time. And I was doing it. And I had a friend, my best friend, who came with me to the gym. I got these passes. I was like, let's go. She came, and then she started having childcare issues. So she wasn't able to continue to go with me. Normally, I would have just said, oh, well, she can't go, I can't go. But there's something in you that if you get to a point, you have to be willing to really have to want it enough.
You're right. Yeah.
Right. And because I wanted it enough, you know, despite all of the fears that people have by going to a gym, or, you know, having to even put on the workout clothes or be around people in those spaces. I was one of those. I didn't like how I looked in the workout clothes. So going to a class, I would always be the one at the back of the room. But when I wanted it enough that I was willing to challenge my own fears. And so I remember I slowly made my way towards the front of the class, even though I hadn't lost the weight that I wanted, because I had to just say there is nothing wrong with being at the front of the class if you're overweight. Like, there's nothing wrong with being in any of those positions or doing all of those things and doing it alone, because at least I'm trying. And so when you kind of get through to a certain point, and another I suppose ingredient is the inspiration factor. You know, in our ability to want things for ourselves, I always feel like there should always be something that we can give back from that transformation or whatever it is. And for me, it's definitely, and even to this day, so this has been like 8 years since I've pretty much lost my weight, right? And I'm still getting people telling me randomly how much I've motivated them or given them a kick up the backside to do things for themselves and all of that. And I hadn't realized, because a lot of those people hadn't supported me when I was doing it myself. but because I was strong enough to go alone, I was able to just push through that because I needed it for me. And now I'm in a position where I can help other people, you know. So but it definitely starts from being willing enough to want it for themselves. Other key ingredients, I would definitely say giving yourself permission. And the reason that I say giving ourselves permission is because, and this kind of links in with this whole, you know, view of self-care and putting ourselves as priorities. Like most of us don't do that enough. We don't do enough for ourselves, and especially the mothers, even in my friendship circle, they do everything for everyone else before they do anything for themselves. And it's like that whole thing with, you know, when you get on a plane and then they tell you, oh, if the masks drop, put it on yourself first.
Yeah.
Right? That's a sign. Put it on yourself first before you help everyone else.
Yeah.
And it's important to give yourself permission to want to have a better life for yourself. Because as much as people, it's just that physical thing they're seeing. It's just, I need to lose weight so I can look like her, or I need to lose weight so that I can wear this type of thing. And then what they don't realize is that they need to give themselves permission to enjoy life, to have a healthy life where they can do the things that they want to do and actually don't think about weight, because they're still focused on it because they want to lose it. But actually, when you get to a point that you actually just enjoy life. Like when I travel, I have zero consideration for weight. I'm like, I am in Iceland, I am eating that cake. Like I am in Thailand, these people are offering me like crab soup, I'm taking it. Like it doesn't matter what it is, I can enjoy it and not feel guilty. And I think that's really the main thing, is that we have to put ourselves first, give ourselves permission to do that. We have to be willing to want it enough to do whatever it takes to get what it is that we want. And definitely something that we can inspire or encourage others to essentially take a leaf out of our book and try and do something for themselves as well.
Yeah, that resonates so much for me as a teacher, because I had a lot of coaching conversations with kids and inspiring them. Just being, that was, even as a business owner, as a coach, that was really the goal, is just I lead by example and continue. And, you know, when you know better, you do better, and continuing to do better.
Right, definitely. And I think, I don't know if it's just a society thing or a social media thing, but everyone seems to need proof. And sometimes it's kind of like, unless they can see you living a certain way or doing a certain thing, they're just not going to believe it's possible. So, and it's interesting because I remember I had, I think I watched something, and I can't for the life of me remember what it was, but I remember the essence of it. And it was basically, imagine if there is someone in the world who is facing a challenge that they cannot see themselves getting over at all. Like they are just completely stuck. And because you decided to allow your fears to prevent you from getting up that day, you decided to allow your limiting beliefs to not put that idea out, not reach out to that person, not believe you could do what it was that you were, you know, put on earth to do. You didn't connect with that person and didn't give that person an opportunity to see a different life for themselves. And so it's like in those moments, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, doesn't matter if it's to do with weight or what, but if you can just believe that you're sometimes facing struggles so that you can help others, that is also your contribution. Getting over your own fears is a contribution to the world, because it just means that, you know, you have something that you're giving. You may not see it, but you're giving something, and you're helping someone see something that they probably never would have seen without your presence. And I think that alone is like a really powerful thing, because we get so stuck on our own fears and, oh, I don't know if I should be doing this today, and I don't know if this is the right way to do it. But if we just do something, we just don't know who we can help and how much better we would be from it as well.
Ah, I love it. I could talk to you for hours. In fact,
I know,
we have
right?
talked for an hour. And if you've made it to the end, it's because the conversation was amazing. And thank you for staying with us. And I have 3 questions that I always ask. The first one is, what's your superpower?
My superpower is my ability to energize anyone who comes into contact with me.
True, because I came in saying hi less than 20, it was like 22 hours ago. I gave myself a mild concussion. I feel so much energy from talking to you today.
Oh, excellent.
Thank you for sharing your superpower with me. What is your purpose?
My purpose is to help others believe that there are no limits in what they can do in their lives.
I absolutely feel that today with you. I love that. I'm feeling limitless. My last and favorite question is, what's next?
So for me, I have a 5-day free weight loss challenge that I'm doing next week. It's called Cut the Crap, aptly named. And it's just, all of the, I suppose, the values that I have and the transformation that I've had. I want to help other people understand that there's more to losing weight than just what the scales tell you. And so I'm going to be using that as an opportunity to help teach other people very simply how you can just make very brief lifestyle changes and go, yes, it would be a slower journey, but you will get so much more of a fulfilling life that doesn't revolve around what you decide to put in your mouth. So I'll be doing that. And if anybody wants to sign up, you can go to amarkaifitness.com, AMARKAI fitness.com, and sign up. And we kick off on the 5th of October.
Amazing. 5th of October is also my housewarming party. I don't think our place is going to be fully ready, but whatever. I'm okay with it. Thank you so much for sharing your recipe for revision and reinvention. I love that you've leaned into the cheesy rewrite your story. That is my new mission in season 3. We'll be we'll be rewriting stories in one witty and wise conversation at a time. So thank you for being a part of this today.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so glad we connected. I can't remember how we connected, but I'm super happy it happened.
Same. I've really enjoyed my time here. So thank you for having me. And thank you for allowing me to help you be international. We'll forget the other person. It's me.
We'll forget the other person. Apparently I did. See my memory.
Yeah.
I'm talking to her again, too. So we'll keep in touch because
Definitely.
When people let us in their countries again, I have a friend in London already that I was supposed to visit many times. So I'm making my way across the pond.
Definitely. We'll go for a coffee or whatever. Mine's a hot chocolate personally, but we can do coffee too. Or we can do cocktails.
I think I'm quirky enough. Let's go for the cocktail.